Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Nice to see you all tonight. Thanks for coming on out. We haven't been to Birmingham in a while, about a year now. For those that don't know, my name is Stuart Schlossman, and I too have MS. And tonight we want to thank Sanofi-Genzyme for providing us with the grant that we got from them so that we could hold tonight's program. And I hope that you could all thank them as well. Say thank you, everybody. So next up we're going to have Tracy Flemming. Tracy, how about that, right? And for those that don't know Tracy, let me let you know that Tracy is an occupational therapist. She's an MS clinical specialist, currently clinical research coordinator for the Tanner Foundation for MS. She's chair for the Healthcare Advisory Committee for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, recognized as a Volunteer of the Year for the NMSS, that's the National MS Society. She's a recipient of the CMSC Rehabilitation Fellowship Program and a member of the Community Research Advisory Committee for the Lakeshore Foundation. Let's welcome Tracy Flemming. Tracy. Thank you. You want to hold or you want there?
I guess put it there and I can get it out if I need it.
Great.
All right. Good evening. Thank you guys for all coming out to hear us. I appreciate it. I'm Tracy Flemming, Tracy squared, Mom. I'll answer to anything, but I know most of you guys, and I so appreciate you coming. I appreciate Stuart for being in Birmingham again and Alabama in general, the Deep South. We need a lot of education, and I think these programs are so beneficial, and it's just so fun to come together as a community and kind of support one another. So, and Dr. Emily Reiser, of course, I thank her for all the opportunities she's provided me. She is just an amazing mentor, and I definitely would not be here today if it was not for her and her vision for comprehensive care and her care for her patients. She brought me into her clinic, and it's just been a wonderful 10 years for sure. So I'm here to talk about health and wellness and making decisions and how to build your team. So most of you that know me know that this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So pretty much, when do you start? Is it when you're newly diagnosed? Is it when you've had a relapse? Is it when you've moved to a different city? Is it just time for you to get a boost? Are you just more engaged in your health care? Well, I'm here to tell you it's never too late. Any time is a good time to start, to be engaged in your wellness program, to be engaged in your health, and to make decisions based on this, to seek the best care that you can. We are very fortunate in Birmingham that we have so many great MS specialists here. We have the Lakeshore Foundation here, which is an excellent organization and a great place, a great gym. It has great research opportunities. But there are other communities that are not so lucky to have these kind of resources, and thus we need to let people in other communities know that they need to seek what they deserve, which is what we have here, just the best care that they can have for sure. So what are your goals? Like, what motivates you? Is it internal factors that are motivating you? Is it symptoms? You want to get control of your symptoms? Or is it external factors? Say you're having a new grandchild and that's a motivating factor. You want to make sure you're in the best condition that you can in order to help with that. Or is it a weight loss program? Is it just that you're stiff when you get up in the morning now? Is it a new symptom, a new relapse that's happened? Or is it just a new year and you want to make a new change? So trying to figure out what your goals are. A lot of us are motivated by external factors, but it's just as important that we have some internal factors that are motivating us as well. Those are sometimes harder to identify. Building your team. So this is so important. So I talk a lot about healthcare providers, making sure you have a good neurologist on your team, a nurse practitioner, someone that you feel like you can call and talk to and that you feel like you've heard, but also having other healthcare professionals around you, such as occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists. Lots of people don't really understand what speech can do for people who have multiple sclerosis, but there's actually a lot of benefit that you can get from seeing a speech therapist. we're fortunate enough to have a newly diagnosed clinic at our office to where people can go and get these preliminary testings so that you can know your baseline, know where you're at. But even if you're not newly diagnosed, it's a good thing just to go and see what's going on. So speaking to some of the questions that you had, such as what Stuart was saying about the timed 25-foot walk or just walking in general, and suddenly you feel like you've gotten slower. Well, it's great when you have that baseline that you can then go back to and refer back to and say, hey, I'm feeling like I'm slower, but I'm actually not as slow. So it's good to have your team around you. Also to have people around you that support you, whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether it's an online program or a new exercise group that you're involved in. So people who are going to bring that positive energy is always helpful. Licensed counselors, social workers, people like this reaching out for help. There's a lot of depression that can be associated with MS, and some of it has to do with the fact that there's just so much uncertainty, particularly when you're newly diagnosed. You're not sure what's going on and you feel like your body has kind of failed you. So reaching out to those professionals to help early on can give you a good foundation. Nonprofits are very helpful. Lots of them have self-help groups associated with them. They also have great programs like this. There's lots of online videos. There's actually a way that you can connect with people online through social media that can help. I know there's some Facebook pages that are going around for MS support groups in our area. So just reaching out for those positive forces and making sure when you're Googling things or you're reading Twitter or blogs or things like that, that you're making sure it's someone that you can connect with. It's good, substantial information, and it's not something that's going to bring you down or make you in a different place. So utilizing your therapy services. So a lot of people don't realize, but you've actually paid for therapy. Most of your insurance companies, Medicare, the private pay insurance companies, they actually allow you to access physical, occupational, and speech therapy services. So I talked a little bit about getting a baseline, which is nice to do at any point in time, but also seeing us, using us like a personal trainer, setting up that particular program that might be beneficial to you early on, and then coming back to see us kind of like you do the dentist every 6 months or so we can look at that program and readjust it. You've paid for those services, so you definitely want to try to utilize them every year. So one of the programs that a therapist might be able to offer is a vestibular or a balance program. Lots of times when you have balance issues, it can stem from an optic neuritis event or a double vision event that you've had. And sometimes you don't even really know that you're being impacted. You feel like your walking speed is decreased, and you notice that you don't turn your head nearly as much, or it's more difficult on uneven surface to do things like multitask, have a conversation, text, things like that we all have to do in our daily life. So a vestibular or balance program can be a great benefit. So the way that we deliver our vestibular balance program is just doing things throughout your day. So we try to incorporate it into your life program. Just little bursts of balancing exercises, such as if you're doing dishes or you're standing at the countertop trying to stand on one foot to try to balance, to challenge yourself. If you're in the grocery store, trying to move your head side to side to glance at the different items on the aisle. So challenging yourself in that way and kind of molding it into your life so that you don't necessarily have to block off a specific amount of time to perform these balance exercises. When you have a good balance exercise program and you're able to perform it during the day, you can see improvements in your ability to multitask. So suddenly walking on an uneven surface, talking to someone isn't nearly as difficult as it might have been. And we all know we have to multitask all day long. Especially with the invention of our phones, we're constantly either answering our phones, talking on them, looking down on them, texting with them. When you're making a meal in the kitchen, you often have to multitask, and it takes a lot of balancing to do this. Just sitting or without support can take some balance and vestibular issues, working on a computer, glancing from the computer to down to paper. All of this can cause vestibular issues, and it can cause you to be slowed and have more difficulty. But the more you practice and the more you do these kinds of exercises, the more improvements you can see in these areas. There's actually a lot of studies that show when your balance is improved, your fatigue is actually decreased. So I think it's because you don't have to think so much about what you're doing. It's just you're more balanced, so you're not as worried about falling. You're not having to think, clear my foot, things like that, so that you're able to, it decreases some of the muscular fatigue as well as some of the cognitive fatigue. Vestibular exercises can also help with fall risk. And then also it can help with driving or even riding in a car. We have a lot of people that have car sickness or not able to drive the way that they used to, or more scared to drive. And so some of these vestibular exercises can actually help with that so that you become more comfortable. So the balance training, we talked about breaking it up into several sessions during the day, incorporating it into your life. So doing things like raising up on your tiptoes if you're sitting at your countertop, if you're talking on the phone, trying to put one foot in front of the other while you're having a conversation with someone to challenge yourself. So just really trying to incorporate it through your day so you don't have to block off that one big chunk of time to do the exercises. A good place in your house to do balance exercises is in a corner. So that way you have the two sides of the corner. If you do tend to fall to one side or the other, you can catch yourself that way, or keep a chair close by so that you can hold on to that. Try to do some multitasking while you are balancing, or while you're doing your balance exercises. You can try to say an object of each letter of the alphabet in order to challenge you cognitively. You can have a ball and be, while you're standing doing your balance activities, throwing and catching that. So something to really challenge. If you're on a treadmill and you're walking, maybe looking down at the treadmill and up at the TVs to challenge yourself in that way. Really trying to get the biggest bang for your buck and do multiple things while you're doing your balancing exercises. So always trying to challenge yourself. If something is easy and you start to where you're able, let's say, to stand with your feet apart and do all of your balance exercises, maybe the next time trying putting your feet together to challenge yourself a bit, or standing on a pillow so that you have that uneven surface. So that gives you more of a challenge as well. So you always want it to be difficult. You maybe want to have a little fall or stumble, not fall, that's a bad word, but maybe like a little stumble or a little sidestep to catch yourself. And that way you're actually challenging yourself. And that's when the improvement is going to come. Stretching, love stretching. So really, this is hard to take time to do this, because it does take a long time to stretch different muscle groups. And I think the biggest mistake that I know that I make is I don't hold the pose long enough, or I don't do as many repetitions, so I don't get quite as much benefit from this. And I can tell I'm actually very, very sore on the days that I ditch out on the stretching exercises when I'm in a class. But basically, you want to kind of start from the head down. So everything is linked in your musculoskeletal system. So, lots of times people will complain of say, back pain when it's more like their hamstrings are tight. So just definitely looking at all of your larger muscle groups and trying to hit all of those, including your neck, your scapula, which are your shoulder blades. We all hold so much tension, so much pressure there. And so a lot of times that can be causing back issues. It could be causing hip pain, and that could impact your walking as well. So trying to hold each stretch for 30 seconds, it's a very long time, and try to repeat that stretch 3 times, trying to deepen it after each time that you're holding it. Yoga and Pilates is an incredible form of stretching. There's definitely some ways that you can modify poses, particularly in yoga. If you're not able to, you're not as flexible, so you can't reach a certain component or you can't reach the floor, you can use yoga blocks, you can use chairs to build up and slowly start reaching as far as you can. There's all kinds of stretching straps, yoga straps, that can actually help you in order to achieve those range of motion. You can use a towel, you can use a belt. If you can't get that full range, even a dowel rod or a broomstick or a cane can help as far as reaching your maximal potential in those different muscle groups. Mobilizations are incredible. Lots of times if you're tight in one particular area, even a stretch can't get those particular trigger points. So using a lacrosse ball, which is it's firm, placing that on an area that might be particularly tight or a trigger area that's giving you issues. If you can't reach it, you can always lie down on it and just hold it there, or you can put it up against the wall and rub your body up against that lacrosse ball. You can do the same with a softball. They actually have these rollers now that you can get. You can either sit on or you can roll your leg or your hip on. They even have handheld ones that you can rub on particular areas. Lots of times when you're tight, it's because of a particular trigger point that you need to focus on. So definitely mobilizations are a big help. And you want to perform your stretching in multiple positions. So you don't always want to be standing or sitting. You want to get on your hands and knees. You want to lie down on your back, and you definitely want to lie down on your stomach. A lot of people do not like to lie down on their stomach, but it's so important to get that stretch in those multiple positions. Strengthening exercises. So I'm not a huge fan of dumbbell work. I think there's a time and a place definitely for it. I like more of the body weight supported, particularly for people who have MS, because I feel like if you're doing a plank, you're getting more muscle groups incorporated. So if that's the only exercise you can do because of fatigue, then at least we've maximized your benefit. You've incorporated a lot of muscle groups in that one movement. I also like body weight supported exercises because I feel like it gives you good, what we call proprioception. So when you're numb and you have tingling or numbness, or you have just the funky dysthesias, sometimes that helps you to feel where your body is in space, to do a squat or to do a lunge or to do a push-up. You're more aware of where your body is rather than an external force giving you that strength component. I like TheraBands. You can use different resistance. You can use a lighter one for the smaller muscle groups and a TheraBand for a stronger one for the larger muscle groups. And they're very portable. They're easy to store. They can be very beneficial, very helpful for the strengthening components. Instead of a dumbbell, another thing that you could utilize for a strengthening program are the weighted balls, particularly with upper extremity strength, because those you have to actually work on grip strength as well when you have them in your hands. They're not as easy just to hold. They're not comfortable in your hands like a dumbbell is. So that's another way to get a bigger bang for your buck, because you're actually having to concentrate on holding something while you're lifting it and doing strengthening exercises in that way. And just making sure if you're starting a strengthening program that you're working with a physical therapist or an occupational therapist to determine what's the most appropriate strengthening program for you. Certainly don't want to go and hurt yourself, but at the same time, we do want to challenge you as well. And I think most people will tend to do the same type of strengthening over and over again. And I think it's important that we perhaps mix that up a little bit. I think you get better benefit when you're doing some different forms of strengthening instead of just one protocol or one plan. Fatigue. I wish that I had all the answers as far as fatigue goes, but I think it's a multitude of things that we can work with. And I think as an occupational therapist, we were always taught energy conservation. That was about 1 billion years ago. And I think now I've learned so much that it does play a role. Energy conservation definitely does play a role in terms of figuring out what's important for you to do. What you need to have energy for. But I do believe that one of those components needs to be, and this is for myself included, some sort of exercise program. And it's kind of a cyclical factor because people think, I'm too tired to exercise, and then they don't exercise, so then they don't have the energy. So I try to tell people once you get started, it's rough at first, for sure. But if you just will stick with it over time, you do in the end up having some benefit, and it does help with fatigue in the end. So trying to determine what kind of fatigue you have. Is it a particular muscle group? So for example, when you're walking, is there one leg that's weak and then becomes fatigued? Or when you're riding or holding something, is it a hand that becomes fatigued? So that would be more of a muscle fatigue. Or is it a heat intolerance that brings on the fatigue? So if that's the case, then we need to look at pre-cooling way before you start exercising, going ahead and making sure you have a cooling vest, you have a cool area to work out in, you maybe have cool water. So that can be a component to decrease your fatigue. But also there's a cognitive fatigue, where you just are overwhelmed, you hit the wall, you just can't think. And that can bring on overall debilitating fatigue as well. So there's a lot of cooling equipment out there. There's frog togs that are easily accessible. I think a lot of the sporting goods stores have, you just kind of wet them and you can stick them around your neck. There's cooling vests that are out there, some of which are heavier and more cumbersome, and some of which cause you to have wet clothes and different things like that. I still think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this area. They have cooling bands that you put on your wrist as well. Some people have some benefit with that. Cooling hats. There's lots of things now, in particular for, there's cooling pillows, and there's actually fans that you can attach to your bed in order to cool when you're sleeping as well. So they're getting some things out on the market, but I still think there's a lot of things that need to be done in terms of, particularly in the South, just making it to where we can get out and actually, go to the baseball game or do what we go to the beach. So hopefully they'll be coming out. Now they're coming out with all these great new medications. Maybe we can start spurring on some of the equipment that we might need. So there might be some benefit to adding some medication in your fatigue management. That's something that you can certainly talk to your neurologist about. We talk some about sleep hygiene, wondering if sleep has any sort of component to fatigue. So thinking about what's your sleep pattern like? What do you do before you go to sleep? Are you looking at your phone? Are you reading from an iPad? There is some thought that the blue lit screen is not very good for you, that it actually makes you not sleep quite as well. Are you drinking alcohol or caffeine? We all know that can cause some issues in your sleeping. Is it something else? Is it like a restless leg that you're having? And if that's the case, spasticity or spasms, there are some stretching protocols that your physical therapist can actually recommend that can help with that. And I've seen this happen. It kind of makes me upset when they come in and the physical therapist I work with, they're able to cure someone after one visit just by showing them what to stretch in order to sleep better. So sometimes that can be the case. But in bladder issues, I know this is something that maybe you don't want to talk about, and we've been doing a lot of pre-screening. We've been doing some bladder scans in newly diagnosed people, and it does seem that there is people that have these issues fairly early on. So there is a thought out there that if you're having some difficulty with walking, chances are you probably are having some bladder issues too. So there's medications and there's things that we can get you on so that we can better control that, so then you're able to better sleep and hopefully have not as much fatigue. Diet, we talked about, Dr. Emily mentioned this. As far as fatigue goes, I know there's a lot of people who will cut out gluten or sugar, and suddenly they find that this impacts their energy level. There's not a lot of good research out there right now as far as this goes, but it certainly can't help for us all to eat a little bit cleaner, feel a little bit better as far as our diet goes, and drinking plenty of water. I know if you're having bladder issues, or if you're having walking issues and getting to the bathroom is difficult, then you're not as motivated to drink water, but it's amazing what water can do for your body in terms of fatigue. Cognitive rehabilitation. So this is something that we're still learning so much about. There's actually, they have a cognitive summit, I think every couple of years through the consortium of MS centers, where people get together and really drill down on this. Because I think this is a lot of the reason why we see people that are no longer able to work. It's more cognitive problems than it is actually physical disabilities. So it impacts people even when they're newly diagnosed, more with memory issues and processing speed delays. So seeing a speech therapist or a neuroscientist that does some cognitive research in order to get tested, see what your baseline is, and then to give you some strategies. Because there really is a thought that if we give you the tools, the strategies, if we give you extra time, if you're having cognitive deficits or issues with that, then you can perform just as well as the general population. And now with the smartphones, there's just so many ways to send yourself reminders or cues or to help with memory issues. There's a lot of things out there, I think, that are beneficial. There's actually now correct me, Stuart, it's the Land of MS, the communication tool. So actually this is something that is out there through MS Views and News, which will give you prompts and help you to determine what questions you might need for you need to ask for your healthcare providers. It will also prompt you as far as to track your symptoms, because this is something so important. Speaking to relapse and some of the questions that we had earlier, a lot of people will say like that they have extreme fatigue just before they start to have a relapse. So it's kind of nice to be able to track, know how you're feeling, and then be able to report that to your healthcare provider. Because I mean, I know how all of our lives are, and I couldn't even tell you what I had for breakfast yesterday, much less how I was feeling, and it kind of catches up with you, and suddenly you're like, I don't know, this has been going on for a long time. So I think that tools like these that are out there, that are available for us to utilize, can be so beneficial. So wellness programs, there's a lot of different gyms and different things popping up out there. There's CrossFit gyms and just all kinds of different boxing classes, things like that. I encourage you to try whatever you can, get involved, see what's out there, see what challenges you. If you feel like you cannot participate in something like this and you might need some ideas as far as what would be a good group or class for you to take, visit your physical therapist, go through some of the movements or the exercises that have been required of you and see if we can modify them. I think some people benefit from group classes in terms of just motivation, perhaps the challenge, perhaps if it's a timed exercise, sometimes you're trying to beat someone, if there's a leaderboard, sometimes it's just a socialization aspect of it. I like some of these classes in terms of that they promote a lot of multitasking and a lot of balance and core movements, particularly like with a dance class, like a Zumba class. It's a lot of cognitive tasks. You have to think of the steps and what you're going to do next, plus follow someone's movements. So all those kind of exercise activities that you can get, the socialization and the different components, the balance components, the strength components, the cardiovascular components, those are beneficial in terms of when you only have so much energy, you only have so much time in your day. Try to pick something that's going to hit all these different areas so that way you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. So your guidelines are you just really need to try to do cardiovascular strengthening and stretching programs at least 20 to 30 minutes every day if you can. I know that's difficult. You can mix them up, or you can do your stretching one day and maybe your cardiovascular and your strength the next day. Keeping in mind that you might need to cool before and after you do an exercise. Try to set some goals. Hold yourself accountable. Maybe post your new plan on Facebook, or text a friend and tell them what you're going to do, so that way it kind of holds you more accountable. Tell your neurologist, tell your physical therapist, so that it's out there. People know your goals, and then they're asking you, hey, how are you doing on that? So it kind of holds you a little bit more accountable. There's a lot of apps actually out there. There's like 7-minute exercise videos that are free. They usually require very little equipment, if any at all. It's a lot of like the body weight supported exercises I told you about. There are some different video series out there by some pharmaceutical companies that have sponsored, I think, Exercise with Katrina. I don't even know if that's still around. It was a Biogen DVD, I feel like, and Yoga with Baron Batiste. That was a good one as well. We have some copies of these, I think, in the office, and I'm sure other people could get those for you as well. We are developing a tele-exercise program for multiple sclerosis, so hopefully in a few years I can come back and give you results of that, but hoping that you can be able to do some exercises very specific for MS on a tablet. I think that would be very nice. Signing up for an event can often get you motivated. It can give you a goal. There's a lot of couch to 5K runs that are out there that actually have delineated what you need to do each day. MyFitnessPal is a great way to track your exercise, calories if you so like to, what you've eaten. There's a walking journal that Accorda gives that I think is beautiful, that you can actually put in there your exercise, and it actually prompts your symptoms as well, but it's more of a handwritten journal instead of online. Yeah, and many of the different pharmaceutical companies will have different programs that actually will help you track your fitness level. Yeah, so even the Fitbits can help as well. I think that the thought is out there that you have to get this goal of 10,000 steps. I'm not so sure that was scientifically based. So I think what I would encourage you to do is monitor your steps on a day that you're active, and monitor your steps on a day that you're not active, and try to set your goals somewhere in between there. Your goal and my goal can be completely different. So just making realistic goals for yourself. I mentioned a little bit about clinical research. There is a lot of clinical research out there. There's different reasons to get involved with research. Sometimes it can be that you get the newest and greatest that's out there. Sometimes you can get MRIs on a more frequent basis than you perhaps could if you were not in a research trial. Sometimes it's free medication. Sometimes it's free therapy. So we're very fortunate, again, in our area to have UAB and a lot of clinical trials going on right now, even in the exercise world that we're in right now. And we're actually happy that we're able to offer it in multiple states and multiple different areas, hopefully to include some of the rural areas as well. But those trials, those programs are out there, so you just need to, you just need to ask your neurologist, ask your physical therapist, look on clinicaltrials.gov if you're interested in participating. I know the medical community greatly appreciates any involvement that we can have. It only helps us further our cause, for sure. Oh, and you do get your own data, so you will have then either a fitness report or you'll have your MRI, so it gives you like personally more data that you can have about yourself. So quality of life, surrounding those people around you who believe in you, who support you, who are going to, even when you feel bad, be there, that are going to understand your invisible symptoms, because I know that can sometimes be frustrating, cognitive issues or fatigue issues. Someone that doesn't understand that can be very difficult. Having people here with you at events like this, I mean, it means so much for people, caregivers, to come and actually spend the time to come with you so that they can learn more. I think it's just a great testament of a great relationship. So just really deciding what's important to you, so that way you're not expending on all your energy on things that are not important, or things that are going to cause you emotional damage. Thinking of mindfulness, this is kind of a big topic that people have been talking about lately. They say that being mindful is just really realizing what your body's doing, particularly like when you're exercising, not letting your mind wander as far as lists of things you have to do or conversations that you're going to have with someone, but really drilling down on feeling yourself breathe, feeling your body in that position that it's in, feeling what you feel inside of you rather than the external factors weighing in on you. This is very, very difficult to do. There's a lot of classes out there, books out there. It's a very interesting subject. I think particularly when you have a chronic disease, being mindful of what's going on inside of you can help, like in terms of explaining physically how you feel to your healthcare provider or your partner or your friends, but it also can help you identify what's going on with you. And there's so much that says being mindful helps so much with your emotional well-being as well. So a lot of times a good way to start with this is just to, before you exercise, or when you get up in the morning, or when you go to bed at night, just having about 5 minutes to yourself to work on your breathing. You can move your body within that time, but just being quiet, not necessarily even praying, but really just thinking about how you feel, thinking of your body. It's an interesting concept. So how do you get started? So I would highly recommend, if you haven't gone to a comprehensive care center or sought any kind of evaluation from a multidisciplinary team, that you start there. So that way you know the level that you're at right now. And then if you have questions moving forward, you at least have that data to refer back to. I talked a little bit about accountability, so letting your family, your friends know what's your new plan, how you're going to be engaged in your wellness and your health. We talked about posting on social media along the way, your successes and your downfalls. I think so many times the stuff that we see on social media is always so positive, it can get you down a little bit. I think it's important to show people, hey, I'm having an issue with this, and let them know that they're not the only one that's out there. We talked a little bit about keeping a journal so that you can see how far you've come, or maybe you can recognize some patterns or trends in your life that perhaps need to change, whether that's a journal that's online or whether it's a journal that you actually handwrite in. I think it's important to get those feelings, those messages out. Just trying to do something every day, whether it be for your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, or maybe it's both. I would hope it would be both. But if you're doing something, then you're definitely moving towards a wellness goal. And I have to tell myself this all the time, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't beat yourself up. Tomorrow's a new day. You can always start again. That's it.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
That was great, Tracy. Thank you. Good topics. Great. Anybody have questions? Come on, we're going to do this again. There you go. There's one person right there.
Did you say that we have, 6 months of physical therapy that we already paid for by our insurance or something every year?
I wish.
How did you say we have therapy
every
year?
6 months? I would like for you to come and see me.
6 months.
The typical Medicare plan is is limited. It's a capped dollar amount, so I think it's $1,900. Don't quote me on that. For occupational, $1,900 for physical, and speech are together because they left off a comma in legislation, and we have not been able to change that. And I don't know how many years it's been, but it's been ridiculous. I've been practicing for 21 years, and it's been ever since then. So that comes out roughly to somewhere around 15 to 17 visits a year. And usually Blue Cross and the other private providers will give you a similar amount. So typically it's somewhere around 15 per discipline per year. So just utilize those dollars. Sometimes there can be a copay associated or a deductible associated with that, but there are some foundations that can help with that as well to cover that. There's no good evidence out there. There's no good research, which is why I've been trying to talk to occupational and physical therapists to get more involved in research as far as frequency goes. There was a bill that was passed that recognized that MS is a chronic condition and that we shouldn't be held to these lofty goals, that a goal could just be maintenance, could just be physical therapy for maintenance. That was just passed recently, and it's still a work in progress. There's still some pushback from that. So, yes. Yeah.
Hey, Tracy. Did they recently change the law in Alabama where you don't have to have a doctor's note to go to therapy?
Yes. So what they've changed is you can go to do an evaluation without a doctor's referral, which is great. So then at that point, if we want to continue care, we have to request the doctor to sign our plan of care. And it just has to be done within 30 days.
You made mention about people bringing their caregivers to like these kinds of MS meetings. Do you all at your practice recommend that a person come in with their caregiver even for their appointment?
Definitely for baseline visits, because there's initial visits, because there's a lot of information thrown at them, so that can be helpful to hold them accountable. There is... You have to read your patient. There are some caregivers who are super supportive, and you can tell that they're there and they're just going to cheer that person on. There are others that can be counterproductive. So there have been times where we have asked, there's food out in the lobby, can you go sit out in the lobby, or things like that. So you have to really read your patient. But generally the first visit, it's nice to have someone else there. I think that's for all visits, even neurology visits. It's nice to have someone else to listen in on the things that maybe you don't hear about yourself.
So for those caregivers coming in, aside from just the medical treatments, do you recommend that they get involved with the patient or their loved one that's got MS, to get involved with even some of the outside activities, even to do like the therapy, the exercise and whatnot?
Oh, absolutely. We have a lot of caregivers that actually participate in exercise programs with their partners. I think it's fabulous. Social support. I mean, and a lot of siblings, a lot of children get involved as well. Best friends, neighbors. It's nice that community base really helps support you and lift you up when you're entering in any kind of new endeavor.
You talked about getting involved with a comprehensive care team. Now, you have that here, but I live in Florida, and that doesn't exist that I know of. So where do I start?
So the MS Society does have what's called Partners in MS Care. So they've identified occupational and physical and speech therapists that actually have expressed an interest in treating people with MS. And they have to renew this every so often, so they keep up with them to make sure they're doing continuing education in this area and that they're the best fit. So they will have a list that you could contact them and ask them who they recommend. The Consortium of MS Centers as well offers a clinical specialty test that they will give to healthcare providers, be that nurses, therapists, neurologists, in order to identify who's the best in that area. And that list is on their website as well. But it is a goal of mine to teach other healthcare providers, the nuances, the invisible symptoms, the cognitive and the vestibular kind of issues that we might see with MS, and get the word out there, because it's very frustrating for myself as a clinician, and I'm sure you guys as patients and caregivers, when a patient is sent to an orthopedic specialist and they can't really get exactly what's going on with the patient, and they just waste their therapy visits. So it's important that we teach people, particularly in these rural communities, exactly how to treat MS and not be afraid, because I was just talking to Diane a little bit ago. It's so exciting to see how there's so much movement within this disease. You can have someone that comes in to see you on a walker and then pretty much progresses to a cane. There's change that really can be made in this population, and I think that's what's always driven me to treat people with neurological diseases.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Round of applause, Tracy. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So everybody, I want to thank you all for coming here tonight, and please, before you exit, please write down those seminar evaluation forms. We need to know what it is that you liked about the program, may have disliked about the program. Tell us what you want us to bring back to you, because we are going to be back again in 2018, but we want to know what kind of programs or what you may want to see us to do a program about. If enough people here answer that, and we will put out an email blast about it anyway to everybody in the state, ask what kind, let us know what you want to see or what you may want for a specialist to come in and speak to you about. Could be bladder issues, all right? It could be about maybe devices to use for, like, when you're having problems reaching for something, or tying your shoes or buttoning your shirt. These are things that Tracy can also speak about, not the urology, but about those things, all right? And, if you want to know about boating, you could ask Dr. Reiser, so she could help you out there too. But anyway, again, I want to thank you all for coming here. It's getting a little late tonight, so I want to, again, thank you all, and please drive carefully going back. Again, I want to thank Sanofi-Genzyme for providing us the grant to do tonight's program, and I want to thank you all for being here, because without you, we couldn't do this program. Thank you.